Hey, so I was recommended this really good book, and it's called When You Don't Like Your Story by Sharon Janes. And the lady who recommended this book, she told me to read it slowly because it's gonna be really, really hard to digest. And I would say that no matter what your story is, no matter what things you've gone through, this book has a way of touching down on some sensitive areas of the heart that we all experience at some point in life, regardless of the story, regardless of how we went down that rabbit trail and got to, and we hit rock bottom. Like, we all experience this kind of stuff. And it just so happens that, with abortion being in the news right now, pro choice, pro life, this is a really hot topic. I just happened to be on chapter 5. No, this is chapter 6, and this girl's got a testimony about having an abortion. So if you don't mind being read to, if that's not terribly boring, I'd like to read this to you. I'm just, I don't think, I can't relate, but this literally broke my heart for her. So anyway, where should I start? Let's see. Okay, so let's start where she finds out that she's pregnant. Okay. Several months into the relationship, Pat knew she was pregnant. I had already done this one time, she explained. Even though I loved my 4-year-old son, I didn't want another child right then. Mike and I were engaged. I didn't want to start a marriage already pregnant, but with as little baggage as possible. Besides, I was going to be a career woman, and another child didn't fit into my plans to start my own insurance agency, so I decided to have an abortion. Mike was somewhat stunned and silenced with this new turn of events. Pat simply told him she was going to have an abortion, period. She didn't want anyone to know, especially her parents. Mike felt he didn't have any say-so in the matter, so he just kept quiet. And that's how she ended up sitting in the dimly lit abortion clinic in the middle of a strip mall. Barred windows, barred heart, mildewed carpet, made up mind. If Pat could rewrite her story, this is where she would tear out the tear stained pages and insert new ones with fresh ink and unmarred edges. But she can't. So let's keep going. A darkness hovered low as Pat waited in that reception room. The barricaded windows cast distorted lines on the threadbare carpet. Something felt wrong. I didn't allow the feeling that the decision was wrong to change my mind about having an abortion. Instead, I changed my mind about where I would have an abortion. I deserve better than this, I thought. I don't need to hide in some seedy abortion clinic. It's my right to have this procedure performed in a clean medical facility by professional staff. Yes, I have the right to a nice and easy abortion. After all, she had written her first published paper in a college on a woman's right to choose. Pat picked up her purse and left the abortion clinic. With one phone call, she scheduled a consultation with her regular OBGYN. The pristine doctor's office stood in a stark contrast to the dingy abortion clinic. Cheery lighting, crisp decor, and a professional staff gave her a sense of safety and security. The consolation wasn't much of a consolation at all, Pat shared with me. The emotionless automaton gynecologist didn't ask me any questions, and I didn't offer any information. He didn't ask me why I wanted an abortion. He barely looked me in the eye. The doctor didn't tell me how far along I was or what the procedure entailed. He just told me to show up at 7 a.m. on the day of the procedure and I'd be out in time for lunch. It would be all over in 30 minutes and I could get back to life as usual. Think of it like a 3-hour break in your busy day, he said. No big deal. But it was a big deal. Pat and Mike got married 2 weeks before the scheduled abortion, but the honeymoon wasn't what they had hoped. As they lay in each other's arms, another life lay between them, a life they tried to ignore. What should have been the happiest time of their lives was the union of two broken people filled with shame, self-loathing, and sharp places that raked across each other's souls. On the day of the abortion, Pat opted to have general anesthesia rather than local. She wanted to be completely sedated and unaware of what was going on. With a mask securely fastened over her mouth and nose, she closed her eyes and drifted into twilight. However, when she awoke, it wasn't to the sounds of a post-op nurse clearing the room, but the swooshing sound of a respirator pumping oxygen into her lungs. She couldn't move her body or speak past the intubation tube running down her throat. Where am I? Why can't I speak? Within moments, she wished she hadn't awakened at all. When her eyes finally focused, she saw her distraught parents at the foot of the bed and a tear-stained husband holding her feet, all of them willing her to wake up. Once Pat regained consciousness, the doctor came in to explain the situation. "You had an allergic reaction to the anesthetic," he said. "When you stopped breathing, we had to put you on a respirator with a tube down your throat to keep you alive. You've been unconscious for 6 hours." Her goal had been to have a simple procedure without her parents knowing about it. And now they did. Over the next few days, Pat developed a high fever, nausea, vomiting, and excruciating pain. The doctor's office told her not to worry about it, but to take some ibuprofen. A trip back to the doctor's office 5 days later revealed the problem. "During the emergency procedure from your first abortion attempt," the doctor began, "parts of the fetus were left behind. We'll have to do the abortion over again to remove them." The word fetus sucker punched Pat in the gut. For the very first time, she allowed herself to see this pregnancy not as a condition, but as a baby. Her baby. Her mind spun out of control, and she felt as though she were going to pass out. Parts were left behind. What parts? Arms? Legs? Heart? Oh God, what parts? In one moment, Pat went from being a brave woman in charge of her destiny to a shame-filled little girl out of control. After the second procedure, neither she nor Mike ever mentioned the abortion again. Shame had silenced them both. The secret was filed away in the cold metal drawer of a doctor's office between K&M. Pat and Mike had another son a few years later, but by that time the marriage was little more than a cauldron of anger, bitterness, and resentment. One day, Pat drove home from her insurance agency, swung her 280Z sports car into the driveway, and walked her stiletto-clad feet into their fashionable home. "It's over, Mike," she said. "I'm done. Get out." Shame had won, temporarily. And then the next part of this is the defining characteristics of shame. But I don't think I've ever read an abortion story or like an abortion testimony of the experiences that these women go through. And my heart just breaks. There are no words for that kind of experience. Nobody should have to go through that. I mean, I guess I'm one of those hopeless romantics. I don't know, but just hopelessly hopeful. Even no matter how difficult the circumstances are, I tend to have hope for the bigger picture. And I just saw somebody on social media talking about how they had decided to get an abortion because financially they were in no way set up to have a child, and there was a couple living together. And I mean, I see so often couples getting into these situations and then, having these disagreements or having to make these major decisions together, and there's so much like confusion and anger and grudging, and it's like, I can have this whole conversation of tracing this toxic family dynamic back to certain things within the economy and society, but it's almost like we are so far gone. We are so far gone from morality and a strong family system and values that people get stuck in these pits and that they find themselves in, and they're wondering, how did we get here? Why do I have to make a decision like this? This is all so crazy. This is all happening so fast. Like, and my heart just breaks for them, because it's like, you know, I could say, well, you wouldn't be in this situation if you had thought about this, or if you had been wise in making a decision to, you know, stay the night with this person or whatever. But really, it's more than that. It's more than that. And we can't, we can't really make it an individual thing, because you can't crucify somebody for what they don't know. And I was just watching, what is it, the Institute for Creation Research, the DVD. It's on Genesis, and it's called Your Origins Matter. And there's a verse that this guy references, and it's about, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? And it's like, you know, if the foundation for morality and values and having a strong, healthy family dynamic, and it goes beyond the economy and society. I mean, there's so much behind the scenes that's going on. It's like, if our foundation is destroyed, what can we do? Because you simply cannot crucify somebody for what they don't know. But in a way, we're all responsible for what we're seeing happen in this country. And that's a whole other can of worms, about how, Christians can't even defend the faith because they won't even study the Word of God, because they think that if they make a profession of faith, they inherit eternal glory. And it's not that simple. It's just not that simple. It's so much more than that. I'm not saying you have to work for your salvation, but you have to work it out, and you have to iron it out. What's born of the flesh is flesh. What's born of the spirit is spirit. And you have to overcome your flesh. And once you're saved, it's not this one and done thing. It's a lifelong story with you and God, having a repentant heart. Because when you're saved, it's not like you're never going to sin again. You're still in a fallen world, in a broken state, because you still are flesh and bone. And the only difference is now that your spirit is alive. It's passed from death to life. You're no longer a slave to sin. You're no longer a slave to what the Bible describes as sin, which is adultery, sexual perverseness, or lying, cheating, greediness, being money hungry, whatever. You're no longer a slave to, that kind of stuff. Now you're alive. You're alive in Christ, and His Spirit has brought yours to life. And so together you learn to be mindful of spiritual things and live by a spiritual narrative, and seeing life through God's eyes, and desiring what He desires, having His heart cry, sharing His same heart cry. What breaks God's heart now breaks your heart, and you start to grieve for the things that people think are normal. Things that have been normalized in culture that are incredibly wicked and evil. So anyway, I could really go off on a tangent tonight, because I'm tired, and that's what I do when I'm tired. But no, I just wanted to get on here and share that testimony with you, in case there's, I know there's probably a ton of people that have never heard of, somebody's testimony that's had an abortion. Like these girls, again, they think it's one way going into it, and they think, I'll be fine. It's just, just get it over with. And the emotional ramifications are, it's costly. So anyway, that's all.